Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar with the People's Plant. My name is Emily. I'm the Senior Campaign Lead here at Birchal. And just before I introduce you to Beck, Ben, and Emily, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I'm coming to you from today. Birchal is based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. As mentioned today, I'm joined by Beck, Ben, and Emily from the People's Plant. There might be a few of you who are a little bit unfamiliar with crowdsourced funding or CSF or equity crowdfunding. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview, but it's a relatively new form of fundraising in Australia that was founded in about 2018, and it allows small businesses and startups to raise capital from a number of smaller or retail investors as well as larger sophisticated or wholesale investors through an online platform such as Birchal. So instead of seeking funds from traditional sources such as venture capitalists or banks, these businesses can turn to the general public, and often that's their communities, to raise capital in exchange for equity in their business. Birchal Financial Services is the licensed intermediary for this offer, and I would like to remind everybody that the information and discussion in this webinar today is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as financial advice or recommendation to invest. So if you do have any questions, please head to birchal.com and always consider the offer document and general CSF risk warning before investing. Now, a few of you might have been at the first webinar that we hosted with the People's Plant, but how today's session is going to run. Beck, Ben, and Emily will take over from me in a moment, and they'll go through a little bit of a presentation with a few updates on where we're at compared to where we were in the EOI phase, what we're looking to do with the capital raise, and then we'll switch to a Q&A session. So if you do have any questions at all, you'll see a Q&A bubble at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So please pop them in there and we'll get to those at the end. We're also recording today's session, so if you do need to jump off early or you want to send this to a friend, we'll be sending you the recording link afterwards. So I know I've been talking for ages. I'm going to hand it over to the team at the People's Plant.
Thanks, Emily. Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen here. Great, and you can all see my screen? Oh, hopefully, yeah. Excellent. So my name's Emily and I'm joined here with Rebecca and Ben, and we are the People's Plant. So we're pioneering the future of cannabis here in Australia, and it's really about bringing the cannabis plant back to the people. So cannabis by the people, for the people. So really briefly, who we are, our mission, as I mentioned just before, is to put cannabis back in the hands of the people. So the cannabis plant has been around for about 28 million years. So it's believed to have evolved on the Tibetan plateau. Humans and cannabis have had such a long symbiotic relationship. So when we look at history, its use predates recorded history. Cannabis was first recorded use was around about 10,000 years ago. Its first recorded use as a medicine dates back around 4,000 years ago. So you can start to see that cannabis and humans are no strangers to each other. We've evolved with cannabis. So it's about time that we brought this plant back into the hands of the people. So our vision is to become Australia's most loved and trusted medicinal cannabis brand. And I'd like to hand over to Ben as one of the founders to tell you a little bit about our story.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Our story started back in 2018 when we first went down to Cantech in Sydney. That was the fledgling start of the medicinal cannabis industry here in Australia, and we've been closely following it ever since. I first got involved, got my sister involved, and then our cousin also joined us to form this team of our original founders. And we've been embarking on this journey, and it's been 5 years so far. And we've incorporated many people and a lot of support along that journey. We're wanting to bring a very down-to-earth approach to the medicinal cannabis industry, something that is very relatable and something that is very accessible. My background as a medical herbalist, it frames medicinal cannabis as a medical herb, whereas often it's portrayed as a pharmaceutical drug. And that's really probably a big part of our difference, is that we're really approaching the medicinal cannabis space through a medical herbalist perspective. And that really sort of sums up a little bit as to who we are.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So, and just to reiterate, you know, we are Australian owned. It's Australian grown cannabis. We are fully licensed medicinal cannabis cultivator. And, you know, I'm joined here by Ben and Rebecca, who are brother and sister. So it is a family owned and operated business. And we're really dedicated to this patient-centric approach. So what we have done so far, it's really hard to fit it all on one slide, but we've been operating here for over 5 years, conducting research trials. We have over 170 documented trial crops and still counting, with including our own in-house breeding program. So we're growing cannabis using a few different methodologies, but we're growing outdoors and utilizing the Australian sun. And I don't know about you, but I prefer my medicine and my food to have been kissed by the sun. So we're utilizing both traditional and advanced cultivation techniques, including protected cropping. So we've already secured offtake agreements for the entire stage 1 crop, which is 9.5 tonnes. So it's already sold. We've looked at our environmental responsibility as well as our sustainability to make sure that we have enough water on site, we've got enough power, and so our water storage and our power supply and backup generators are already here on site. So where are we moving to next? So we're expanding our existing research facility to move into our stage 1 commercial medicinal cannabis production. And that's what we're inviting you on this journey to help us move into this stage 1 commercial operation, where we're actually only operating on 2 acres out of our full 160-acre site. So we've got a lot of room for expansion. As I mentioned before, this is just stage 1. So we'll be able to produce 9.5 tonnes here, which is already approved by the OTC, or the Office of Drug Control. We've secured all of our necessary approvals, be that local, state and federal government departments. We've completed earthworks. We've got upgrades to our fertigation system going in today as we speak. And we've had our stage 1 commercial greenhouse already delivered to site. All of our contractors have been engaged, and we've identified all of our essential technology and equipment, including our solventless extraction and rosin pressing systems, which really excites Ben and I, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And we'll be able to elaborate a little bit more on that during question time. So sustainable production is really important to us. So we feel very strongly about environmental and social responsibility. So when it comes to sustainable production, we're using a trademarked OptiGrow methodology where we're able to produce year-round perpetual harvests using a hybrid indoor-outdoor cultivation model. What this allows us to do is to significantly reduce our energy consumption by up to 90% compared to other indoor operations, but still allowing us to have consistent supply. And as I said, you know, to be environmentally responsible. So we've got a gold standard solventless extraction techniques that we will be able to operate on site in order to unlock the full potential of the cannabis plant. And this helps us both enhance the efficacy, but also our product range, while minimizing our environmental impact and minimizing any cannabis waste we'll be able to extract on site. So this allows us to have a diverse product portfolio that caters to various medicinal needs. So there are huge market opportunities for medicinal cannabis at the moment, both here in Australia and globally. And I'm sure everyone joining us here today is very much aware of these market opportunities. We are just seeing year on year, month on month, exponential growth in the number of patient approvals here in Australia. So we are seeing this demand continue to rise. The most commonly prescribed patient indications in Australia is chronic pain, followed by anxiety, sleep disorder, and cancer-related symptoms. We're seeing globally a CAGR of 22 to 24% growth for cannabis over the next 5 years. And, we also have to consider the potential of an adult use or recreational market being legalized here in Australia as well. And what we're really finding is we've got a competitive advantage here for Australian grown as well as low cost production. And we feel like we're perfectly positioned to capitalize on both the domestic and international market opportunities. So in saying that, I'll hand back to you, Ben, to talk about some of our strategic partnerships.
Thank you. So we do have strategic partners. We've got a wonderful relationship with all these companies. One is Rua Bioscience. So they're a listed company in New Zealand, and they're taking full advantage of their amnesty program over in New Zealand. And the amnesty program in New Zealand allows genetics to be brought from any illicit market into the legal market. So Rua is a very strategic partner for us to have access to the world's best genetics. Rua also wants to be our offtake partner for here in Australia. We also have a great relationship with ANTG, who are also supplying genetics to us for us to grow for them. So those two companies are actually very focused on supplying us with very specific genetics that they have in their own range of products. We also have a really good relationship with Medibiz and Cantech, who are their own brands here in Australia that we will white label with those two companies, as well as Cangia. And Cangia also holds a special place for us with warehousing and distribution, and also their partnership in their pharmacy. So all our People's Plant concession program will be channeled through the Cangia pathway. So what we're able to do is we're working B2B with all these companies, but also through Cangia, we are also working B2C. So that's where the People's Plant brand will also be able to be launched from.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben. And while we're talking about strategic partnerships, we would like to include you as some of our partners. And so I'd like to hand over to Beck to talk to you about our Investor Rewards program.
I think Ben sort of touched on it before, and that's sort of when things start to get very exciting for all of our investors. But we start what happens for everybody who invests $250 and above. So we have sort of like an entry level thank you to everybody. We bring you along on our journey. We have an app under development that will give you an opportunity to have live streams from the farm and other interactions with the people here on site, give you the opportunity for feedback and advanced news about things that are coming out, and also some discounts that we'll be offering on People Plant merchandise, which will potentially expand as well. So if we can hit the next slide, because actually from 2000 and above, it gets a little bit more exciting, because what we're able to do, that's where we're really trying to kick in and get a concession program happening. So people will be invited to, if you are a medicinal cannabis patient, you'll be invited to join our concession program, and that will have further benefits for you financially. So this is really where Ben was talking about those affiliate discounts. We've got a strong relationship that we're already building, that we already have established, and there's no limit to what we are excited to be able to offer you. And so then it really also kicks in with the gold level. You get everything, all the other levels, but something that's making people really excited too is being able to come and visit us on the farm and have a personalized farm tour. So for all investors $10,000 and above, we'll invite you out to visit us here and see exactly where your money is helping us grow, and you'll be a part of the team. So investors are super important to us. Without you, you're behind everything that we're doing, because the investors are our community. So we already have close to 300 of you. We're building this community, and you'll be the first people to know about our products that are coming out, to be able to review our products, to be able to feedback on how well they're working for you, what's not working. We really want that open interaction. And so we're quite excited about where this can head.
Yeah, so we're really excited to welcome you to join us on this journey. And Beck, perhaps you could give us a little update of how many people have joined us so far.
Yeah, so we have about, we do have 285 people who are on board at the moment, and This is from an hour ago, so hopefully it may even be a little bit more. We're just excited. We're really pleased. We're getting an opportunity to speak to so many of you. The stories that we're hearing are just incredible, and we appreciate your trust, and we don't take it for granted. There are lots of resources that you can try and find out more information about us. They're available on our Birchal website, on our Birchal page, the People's Plant. So you'll get your offer doc and a bit of the paperwork information, but you'll also get some more information, a little bit about Ben's story behind how that, I don't know how to say that. We'll encourage you. Yeah, what motivated Ben, that's right. And there's podcasts for you to catch up on, and our first Q&A if you would like to watch that as well. So,
yep. Yeah, I actually really love this photo. It makes me laugh every time I see it. Ben and I did a really great podcast with friendly Aussie buds here. Was it just last week, Ben? So if there's plenty of resources for you to jump on online. Of course, follow us on our social media, on Instagram and Facebook. And you can see what we're up to almost daily. We're posting lots of different things. So we really would love for you to join us on this journey. Join the family of the People's Plant, because it is about the people, which means it's about you.
Oh, actually, sorry, Ben was going to give us a bit of an update. Actually, if we could go back to that slide, and just to give people an idea about.
Yeah, so the funds that we've already raised will enable us to complete the greenhouse and also the insect exclusion netting. So already we've made some massive steps forward. Hopefully with more support, our next step will be our irrigation shed, and then we'll be able to get all the fertigation established. And then after that, if we're able to continue to raise a little bit more money, we'll start to move into the post-harvest activities, so the drying rooms and the actual facility, the actual building, the structure of the facility itself, and then fitting that out. So we've made massive steps already, and for that I really truly am grateful. And just to reconfirm what both Emily and Beck said, that we take your investment very, very seriously. We take it as quite a responsibility, and to act on that in the most efficient way to actually get this project off the ground. And we literally can't put into words how grateful we are for all that support that we've already received. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ben. It is so wonderful just how many people have jumped on board already. And so, we basically, want you to join us in shaping the future of medicinal cannabis. We'd love you to come on the journey with us in whatever capacity you can, and share those rewards back to you. And of course we'll be, this is some of our team here on the screen, and you'll also, we'll be expanding our team next year. That is definitely one of the questions we get asked a lot, isn't it, Ben, about job opportunities? And as we are expanding the team, of course, there will be more and more job opportunities as we continue to grow our business and our team. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, team. Really appreciate it. So the questions have started coming in, which is awesome. If anybody has any, please pop them in the Q&A box down at the bottom. I will ask if you guys can... Oh, thank you. Perfect. And we can see your faces. So what is the time period from planting the actual seed to product?
Yeah, I always like that.
Yeah, you can do it if you like.
So once we actually normally grow from cuttings, but so the process is we have a mother plant, so that's an established plant, the cultivar that we're wanting to commercialize. We'll take a cutting from that, which is just the small part. It takes 2 weeks for that to develop roots. After that 2 weeks, it's then put into a vegetative greenhouse where it stays for 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the cultivar, and it will grow probably about this big in about 3 to 4 weeks, and then we put it outside to flower, and it will then grow a little bit further, and the flowering period usually lasts about 2 months, another 8 weeks. So the whole cycle is approximately 10 weeks long from taking that initial cutting to harvest. So it's actually a very quick turnover. So we're running them every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, this process, everything gets shuffled along. The cuttings get moved to the veg moves out to the flower gets harvested. So that's constantly happening all year round. So yeah, it's an endless production of flowers.
Awesome. And how many crops per year are you anticipating?
Yeah, so with that model, it's every 2 weeks. So we will anticipate to have at least 26 cycles. And in one cycle, there may be multiple crops. So we may have multiple strains, or we might have some organic and some conventional running simultaneously through the production process. So there will be at least 26 harvests, 26 cycles, and potentially multiple crops beyond that.
Thank you. So how will concessional along with cheaper price point affect profit margins?
Yeah, so this profit margin is the part between how much it costs to grow and how much you can sell it for. Because we're able to reduce that cost of production way down to say it costs us about 10 cents to produce. If we sell it at a retail price that is similar to the wholesale price that everyone else is selling it at, we still make a massive profit, but it actually makes it nearly unviable for a lot of the other producers to actually go to market at that price point. So we're able to provide a product that is very competitive, like incredibly competitive, but because of our efficiency in production, the actual profit margin is possibly even larger than in most of the indoor production cultivation facilities.
Awesome.
Yeah. But that's actually a really good point, because a lot of people are saying that, like, how do you have a low cost product and actually still have a profit? And it's all about having a super efficient production methodology. And that's what we've spent 5 years refining and getting really tuned in on. Yeah.
Brilliant. This question, I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer, or even if I'll be able to answer, but I'll ask anyway, just in case you can. If someone doesn't have the amount that they want to invest now, are they able to dollar cost average in the business as time goes by?
Meaning, Em, that they will invest more later, and then that will bring down their cost of investment?
I'm not too sure. If whoever's asked this question could maybe give a little bit more explanation in terms of what you mean by that, but you guys might be able to put more money in every week, essentially. Probably not. So a crowdsourced funding offer has very strict opening and closing timelines that are registered with ASIC as part of the regime. So following on from this, the People's Plant would then need to, if they did want to accept more investment, open another offer, whether that be via crowdsourced funding or another way of selling shares. So unfortunately, that wouldn't be possible.
I actually have had that question in where people have sort of asked if they could be on a payment plan. I think that's maybe what we're talking about here. And that was my answer as well. Unfortunately, that's not possible through this program. But and I did respond that we are taking investments from as low as $250 if that could work for people who just wanted to get in. We just have so many people who are passionate and just want to join. And it's so nice. We just take it so great, so appreciative of what people are believing in us.
So good. I'm really heartwarmed to see how much people love everything that you're putting out there. So I'm absolutely with you there. It's great that people are so passionate and want to invest so much.
Yeah.
So being a hybrid of indoor and outdoor, what risks do massive storm cells or cyclones present to your growing and cultivation process?
Definitely a good question.
So we do have an insect exclusion netting, which will also take the brunt of heavy winds and hail out of the equation, and also insects out of the equation. So there is a level of protection that the outdoor environment still has. In saying that, because we've got this perpetual harvest model, it's the last 2 weeks that things can go pear-shaped. So if we'll always have 4 crops in the field at any one time. So if we did have a prolonged rain event, which is probably the biggest risk for us, that last 2 weeks, the crop that's just about to go to harvest is probably the most vulnerable. So we've got strategic ways to approach that, where we may do a double harvest early, we have the drying. We have the drying facilities. Well, we've got the plans for the drying facilities to do a double harvest, where we'll be able to take 2 crops at once to prevent any degeneration from prolonged rains. And the other part of this equation is that all our projections are based on a 20% crop loss, and that's due to environmental fluctuations. The way to get that 20% crop loss out of the equation is to then start to do massive, heavy capital expenditure with indoor growing and so on and so forth. So you can either have massive expense in setting it up and also in running it, or you can just simply accept maybe a 20% crop loss and we just grow a bigger crop every time.
Yeah.
And that will compensate that crop loss at 1 or 2 stages throughout the year. So it is part of our modelling, and working in nature. That is definitely a part of the equation that we have to accept. And in a lot of ways, it kind of makes it a little bit more real. It's an interaction. We are growing a natural product. We are growing it in the cycles of nature, and it will be influenced by nature.
Benny, can you also mention the processing that you can do if?
Yes. So if we did an early crop harvest, we wouldn't put that flower through for inhalation like normal flowers, but dried flowers. We would direct that through the solventless extraction process. So that's our fallback position. If we're getting a lot of rain, okay, we're going to freeze everything and put it through fresh frozen live rosin. So that's always, anything goes wrong, then we'll harvest early and then we push it through into extraction. So the interesting part is the extraction process that we are currently licensed to do here will create a top tier extraction process extract in itself. So we're able to actually potentially have a crop that could be in jeopardy of getting destroyed and turn it into a very, very high level expensive commodity. So there's ways in which we can mitigate these risks, and we've got that very, very well calculated. We've got maps of the whole year and what likely events will occur in this whole year, because we've had 5 years of doing this. Okay, at this time of the year, this is what's likely to happen. This month, this, and because we've got these risks, we've also got strategies to deal with those risks in those particular times of the year when they could occur. So it's something that we've put a lot of thought into, and it is something that is very real, but it's also the balance between low cost of setup, low cost of production, and a high cost of setup and a high cost of production. That's the balance.
Yeah. And we've also got our indoor grow rooms that will be operating, regardless of what's happening outside. And then our plan is for the future is when we expand our stages, that those indoor grow rooms will actually become our indoor mother rooms, so that once we transition to a full outdoor protected cropping cultivation strategy. And, and probably a few of the details in some of the research that we've done is really about selecting the correct genetics to grow exactly here where we're based. And then we use a lot of preventative approaches when it comes to pest and disease management. So, we can look at, as Ben said, we can look at what are we expecting based on the environmental conditions or the time of year. We've already got a lot of processes in place to mitigate those losses, but then we've got various avenues for that product. So all of the top tier, beautiful, bag appeal flowers, they go for the dried flower. Everything else we get to process on site. And that's something that also sets us apart, is the fact that we don't have to transport that to a downstream partner. We do that extraction ourselves. I actually think we might be the only ones who are actually licensed in Australia to do the type of solventless extraction on site, but as a cultivator.
Yes.
I think we're the only ones licensed to do that. So, and that really excites me.
That stands us apart. That we'll be able to produce a very, very clean, high quality extract as well. That in itself, I think, will be, as the market matures in Australia, I believe it will follow similar pathways as it has in other mature markets. It becomes a top shelf, highly sought after product.
Awesome. So this is kind of related, but do you use predatory mites and insects to reduce pesticide use?
Yeah, definitely. So we don't use any pesticides at all. The cannabis that's produced in Australia, it has to be produced under very strict guidelines. If listeners have heard of TGO 93, so the Therapeutic Goods Order 93 actually lists in the European Pharmacopoeia all the different pesticide residues that are tested for in the final product. Now we don't actually apply any chemicals. We use all preventative biologicals, beneficial. So it can be beneficial insects. It can also be beneficial fungi and bacteria. Again, not necessarily unique to cannabis, but because in cannabis we have no choice, we've definitely fine-tuned the art of releasing beneficial insects and other biological products. And it really is just the better way of growing. You know, you're doing a lot of monitoring, so a lot of scouting gets done every day so that we're preempting. We see the problem before it happens. But again, we also work with nature. So we actually use companion planting here. We have indicator plants, and that allows us with our daily monitoring and scouting to be aware of a problem before it actually happens, which means, you know, they're some of our hardest workers on the farm are our beneficial insects.
That's brilliant. And just in case, if any of these risk strategies don't come off, do you have insurance?
Oh, that's a tricky one. Crop insurance is really hard to get.
So crop insurance in Australia is not possible at this point in time.
Yeah.
It's something that I believe will occur in the future. There will be an option, but you are unable to actually insure medicinal cannabis as a crop in Australia at this time.
That came from an insurance broker.
Let him know to contact us if he has a product.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So when you've got successful strains, can you guarantee you'll be able to replicate that product, as some growers can't continue particular strains and it can cause some instability in the faith of the medicinal aspect?
Very good.
Yeah.
So we will have our own proprietary strains. We're also receiving genetics from other companies that they want their genetics grown for them, and that's locked in. Whereas beside that, we will be developing, and we have already been developing, a breeding program that is constantly refining, constantly evolving. We're throwing a broad net into the whole world and pulling the best genetics that we can find, and then we're adapting them to our unique microclimate, and then from that place, we're then potentiating them. We're fulfilling their potential. So it's an ongoing process, but we will always hold our own genetics. We will have our own tissue culture library of genetics, so that they can be accessed at any point in time in the future, and it'll always be on point. That's something that's pretty important.
I think that's a problem that a lot of people that we speak to have with, they can't get hold, they find something that's working for them, and then all of a sudden it's not in stock anymore. And unfortunately, that's what happens when you're importing. You can't necessarily control what's going on. You have another pandemic, and you know, people can't get things over here as easily as they used to be able to. Things can change very rapidly, as we're all familiar with. So what Ben's talking about, it's just future proofing it, and we understand the importance of having consistent available product. Once people find a medicinal product that works for them, they want to stick with it, and we also understand and we value that. It's part of our plan.
Awesome. Will you be producing a range of THC, CBD blends and oils, or just the flower?
No, we'll have a range of different products. So there will be different products of dried flower for inhalation. So various strains suit different patients, different indications, and also for different times of day, whether you want to be more alert and functioning, or whether it's for sleep at the end of the day, and then of course depending on what indication and symptoms that you're treating. It's also very important to have other products that last longer. So inhaled products, their effects kick in very quickly, but they don't last as long as, for example, taking a tincture or a gummy. So with using our solventless extraction methods, once we've got that extract, that can really go, like the list of products that can go into is almost endless. Obviously, we are restricted by the government regulations, but we are, we are really feeling, and a lot of people in Australia are feeling, that we will be moving to a recreational market here in Australia at some point, and that will open up a diversity of products. But yeah, we'll be able to make tinctures, we'll be able to
Topicals,
yep,
gummies,
yep.
Yeah, we're also looking at nano-emulsion in beverages. So I think beverages here in Australia will be quite big in the future. What is required is that the extract is fat soluble, and this nano-emulsion that we've got a partnership over in the States who has refined this nano-emulsion process. The nano-emulsion process makes that fat soluble water soluble. So how that translates is when you put it in a beverage, you feel the effects very quickly, so within about 5 or 10 minutes. So it's not such like an edible where it's 1 or 2 hours. There's a very common story where someone has an edible, doesn't feel anything, has another one, has another one. Then the first one starts kicking in, and then they've got 3 or 4 stacked on top of it, and they can't stop. Whereas a beverage, through this nano-emulsion, you feel that drink as you're, within 5 minutes. So you can then choose if you want to have another one or not, and increase that effect or not. So it's more real time. It's actually more equatable to an alcoholic beverage, where you feel the effects fairly much instantaneously, well, very, very soon afterwards. So we've already got that partnership sort of established, and I do believe that is something that we'd really like to lean into in the future. Yeah.
Brilliant. So one of the attendees has a compost eco green waste toilet that uses hemp sawdust. As an investor, are they able to purchase hemp sawdust through the People's Plant?
How cool is that? What a great question. We're all into environmentally friendly ideas.
I don't believe that will be a possibility, because the Office of Drug Control is very strict with our waste and how we treat our waste. We will be composting our waste here on site, which is the stalks and the leaves and so on. But I don't believe we will be permitted to sell it. It would be awesome if we could do like on South Park with the Tegrity Farm, where they make burgers, Tegrity burgers. But I don't think that's going to be an option here in Australia.
Not for the foreseeable future. So yeah, so as Ben mentioned, we do compost all our waste on site. So there's other facilities that actually have their waste, might be incinerated or might even be taken off site to be disposed of. So we are really trying to have that small environmental footprint. But one of the great things about us being able to have our own extraction on site is that we can actually really limit the amount of cannabis waste compared to other producers, because it's our facility with our equipment and our staff running the extraction process. So we'll be able to sort of literally squeeze every last drop out of the various parts of the cannabis plant, because the cannabis flower is where the cannabinoids are most concentrated. But there are still, as you go down into the sugar leaves and the other trimmings and even fan leaves, there's less and less THC and CBD in those parts of the plant. But because we're extracting on site, we'll be able to, really look at getting the most out of the plant and then composting the rest here on site.
Great. So obviously the investment opportunity is open now until next week on the 3rd of October. Will you be looking to raise further capital in the future? And if so, would it be through crowdsource funding?
Yeah, okay. So as I was sort of alluding to before, we then have to move into the post-harvest activities in the building process. Our total raise is, what we need is actually about $5 million. This raise that we're trying to do at the moment is for $2 million. So there's a shortfall of $3 million. You might have noticed that. We're in a second round in a grant process at the moment for the National Reconstruction Fund. So this came off the back of COVID, where the Australian government is trying to establish more manufacturing here on shore. So we're less reliant on supply chains that could be disrupted through a pandemic or something of that nature. So the government is actually supporting businesses that are shovel ready to pursue innovative manufacturing processes here on shore. So we're in the second round of this process. Those grants are up to $5 million. If we're able to co-contribute, like through this crowd fund, we may be able to contribute 1 million, we might be able to contribute $2 million. That gives us a higher, we're more attractive to actually receive that grant by the government, the more money we're able to contribute ourselves. So if all goes well, we will continue with this crowd fund and achieve $2 million. We will then go into a round, we will complete that round with the National Reconstruction Fund and receive the other 3, and we will complete our facilities. Now, if that grant does not take place, if we are unsuccessful with getting that grant, then we will probably look into going into another crowd fund raise in the future, which would probably be early next year.
Awesome. So that's good for everybody who doesn't have the funds now. Hopefully they can invest next year as well.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
However, and we do encourage them if they want to jump in on this round, because then they'll know what's coming. They're part of the inner of the onion then, and so they know what we're thinking. They know what's coming next. That we'll be able to keep them abreast of how it's going with the grant. We'll be able to keep them abreast. Yes, we are going to open up. So we do encourage people to jump in on this this round at the moment, because you'll have the inside story of what's happening.
And hopefully by the next time you raise capital, it will be at an increased valuation as well.
Oh, yes, we anticipate so. Yeah.
So getting in at the ground floor is really positive and beneficial to shareholders at this stage. So that would be great.
Definitely. And if we are successful with that grant, then it gives an uplift for everybody. So all the investors will receive a massive uplift if we're successful with that.
No doubt. Can you give any commentary as to why other Australian growers who are growing outdoor cannabis aren't able to meet the lower retail price point that your company's advocating for?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's obviously, without knowing other people's business strategies and what markup they're putting on their products, it's really hard to sort of answer why they're not offering products at a lower cost. I would argue it's similar to those people who are importing as well. We're seeing a lot of cheaper product being dumped from more advanced markets such as Canada, where they have stockpiles. They have too much and they are sending it all down under. Why those products aren't also cheaper to the patient, I don't understand. Because I've seen behind the scenes, I've seen some of the markups that different companies are putting on, and I believe it's irresponsible. It's, you have all these companies who, are out there saying, hand on heart, they're all about the patients. And I can tell you, if you're putting that kind of markup on your product, you're not about patients, you're about profits. Now, companies have to be profitable to exist. So we do, you need to be profitable. But there's a certain point where we really need to go, okay, are we about helping people and helping patients? Or are we just about making money? And there needs to be a happy medium where we're there for the patients, where we're bringing the cost down. I think we've just sort of seen that this is the baseline or the average cost per gram, and that's where everybody's happy to sit. And yes, some products are higher quality, are more your craft cannabis, and patients are willing to pay a little bit more for that. Other patients are willing just to take the lowest cost product. But there are actually a few other Australian brands that are of cannabis that are grown in Australia that are lower cost as well. It's just hard as a Schedule 8 medicine. No companies are allowed to advertise their products, so it is very difficult. But it also comes down to that, to that social responsibility.
One thing that Em touched on there is we don't know other people's business models, but I think one thing that you can anybody can see is if somebody's operating at a lower state, they're only able to possibly have 1 or 2 harvests a year. So therefore they have a very different model to what we have. They have additional risk. They have massive amounts of product all at one time. It's a very different model. So while we're still growing outdoors, we are doing something different to two other companies.
Yeah, nobody's actually doing anything like what we're doing. So we do, our methodology is quite unique at this point in time. I'm only aware of maybe one other outdoor cultivator that's actually got product on the market, and they are undercutting everybody as well. You know, it's just the model is a lot less expensive to run. But also, like my sister said, Rebecca, that they're in a lower state, so they're only able to produce, I think, one crop a year. So it is different. It's quite different. Yeah.
Thank you. So one of our viewers, their doctor gave up his license due to increased cost. Are you able to comment on this in any way and how it affects medical professionals?
Sorry, was that the doctor gave up their
License
License.
to I suspect to prescribe medicinal cannabis.
Yeah, I'm not, forgive me if I don't answer if I've misunderstood the question and don't answer it correctly. I know of a lot of patients who cannot afford medical cannabis. So any doctor in Australia and nurse practitioner can prescribe medicinal cannabis. It doesn't actually cost the doctor anything per se, it's their time. And of course, their time is worth money. So going through either as an authorised prescriber or through the SASB, Special Access Scheme B approval pathway, that takes a fair bit of time. The doctor also has to be educated. So some doctors aren't comfortable because they don't have the time in their professional and personal life to go and educate themselves on cannabis because it's a new medicine. You know, in Western medicine, it's just coming back around. So that does take time. It also, you know, is a significant amount of time in their practice to be prescribing and going through the paperwork. But what happens for a lot of patients is they actually can't afford the medicine. So it's not part of the PBS. In Australia, it is predominantly, cannabis is predominantly an unapproved medicine, which means the patient pays. And depending on what your indication is and what your doctor prescribes you, and now that might be CBD oil, THC oil, a balanced oil, you know, different flower for inhalation, you know, daytime versus nighttime. You might also have gummies. And for certain indications, it's a very high dose. And that makes it very expensive. If you're only taking a couple of drops of CBD in the morning and the afternoon, then that might, you know, not cost you more than a cup of coffee a day. If you're actually having to take a significant amount to treat your symptoms, and that could be tinctures combined with flower for inhalation as breakthrough treatment, you know, we're seeing some patients spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month, sometimes well in excess of that. You know, and not everybody, you know, the cost of living at the moment, this cost of living crisis is affecting everybody. So even to say, well, if your medicine costs you $5 a day, like a gummy, for example, I think works out at about $5 a gummy. Now, if you had to take 2 to 3 gummies a day, that's $15. If you're then inhaling cannabis on top of that and you're paying, you know, a substantial amount per gram, and maybe you're prescribed to take 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 grams per day for inhalation. And if that's at anywhere between $10 and $20 a gram, you know, all of a sudden we've just jumped from the cup of coffee to, you know, an a la carte restaurant dinner for 2 every night. And, you know, not many people can afford that, even if it is for their health. And so we are seeing patients have to choose to remain on other medications because they are subsidized, or unfortunately having to suffer. And I mean, that just doesn't sit right with any of us here. And I'm sure, you know, all of the viewers as well. So we really need to bring the cost of the medicine down. And we also need to lobby the Australian government, you know, to help get cannabis subsidized, to get it listed on the PBS. But in order to do that, we need to get registered medicines, which means that we also need a lot more clinical trials in order to be able to go down that more formal pathway. But being a natural medicine, a whole plant medicine, those clinical trials become they're more difficult. And so that's why we haven't actually seen any of these medicines become registered in Australia.
Great answer. So somebody's loved that you referenced South Park. So you're definitely in for the culture. What size is the bucket hat? They said they have a big head and an afro, so hats might prove difficult.
They're welcome to reach out to me personally and I will get that sorted. But
Right.
they are a one size fits all, but if somebody has an exceptionally large head, and my son also has an afro, so we can work with you.
Brilliant. So is it still the case that medicinal cannabis products can't be advertised even if you have received appropriate approvals?
Yeah, so this is not unique to cannabis. Cannabis falls into a Schedule 8 medicine here in Australia. So what happened in February 2016, when the Australian government legalised medicinal cannabis, they rescheduled cannabis from a Schedule 9 to a Schedule 8. Now, there are many other medicines in that Schedule 8 category that acknowledge cannabis has therapeutic value. When it was in Schedule 9, they don't acknowledge that. So Schedule 8 is great. It's got therapeutic value. It can be prescribed, but there are strict regulations around Schedule 8 medicines, which means they cannot be advertised, full stop. Particularly to the general public, but even to patients. So it does mean that we can communicate with doctors and other medical professionals and nurses, so we can talk to them about the products, but that's not considered advertising. Whereas if we are, if anyone is going direct to the patient or the consumer, then that is advertising and it's not allowed. We are hoping to see, in the not too distant future, that cannabis is rescheduled again. So I don't believe that cannabis should be sitting in a Schedule 8. But look, we're lucky that it is at least allowed. I personally didn't think I'd see this in my lifetime. So it is actually incredible that we've had cannabis available as a medicine in Australia for more than 8.5 years now. So we have come a long way. We've got a long way to go, and we invite any of the viewers, to join us in, lobbying the government, continuing the conversation, normalizing cannabis as a medicine, but also just as a plant. It's been demonized for, close to 100 years. And, we want to return the plant to the people. We'd love to see people being able to grow this plant in their garden and grow their own medicine. And be able to consume cannabis, even in a recreational setting. What is so wrong with, being able to enjoy the effects of cannabis? We're allowed to go to the bottle shop or go to the pub at the end of the day, or have a knockoff drink to help us unwind for our busy lives. Why aren't we allowed to do that with cannabis? So, we'll keep on lobbying, to allow that as well.
Sorry, just to jump in, like Ben has a really interesting observation about that with the alcohol and cannabis. What happens in a mature market?
Yeah, so I'll take a couple of steps back, maybe. I think when you look at recreational usage in Australia, there are obviously a number of people that partake in the recreational use of cannabis and maybe in the illicit market. And if you look at that person and their profile, they probably don't go against any other rule. They are not a criminal. They are not a person that likes to break the rules, but yet they want to have access to cannabis. So we've profiled, society has profiled everybody who partakes in illicit cannabis as a criminal. And that would be the only activity that would put them in that category. So if all of a sudden the legislation changed, all of a sudden they're upstanding citizens, or, and they haven't changed any behavioural patterns whatsoever. So it's the way that we view partaking in cannabis. I believe that needs to mature as a society. Like it's bizarre we've created this situation. If you look at how mature markets start to evolve, a lot of Gen X are choosing cannabis over alcohol these days. You look at a lot of the states in America. So there's festivals now that are alcohol free. And cannabis is accepted. There's nightclubs now that are completely alcohol free, that cannabis are accepted. It's an evolution in the culture. So you look at all the negative effects of cannabis, and you look at all the negative effects of alcohol, and it's a no-brainer. I don't need to keep banging on about it, but literally for $200, you can go in and buy a lethal dose of alcohol. $200 is not going to get you anywhere close to sick. on cannabis.
Mm.
You know, it's just bizarre. And we're responsible as citizens to deal with the ability to buy an affordable lethal dose of alcohol, but they don't give us responsibility to partake in cannabis. Like it just requires maturity and a mature approach to the laws.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's time for change. It's time for a revolution.
Yeah.
So what experience do your staff have in growing cannabis plants?
Oh, a lot.
Quite a lot. Yeah,
I don't know. Me,
Yeah.
no, but I'm the odd man out. Everybody else knows a lot.
Well, I mean, our growers here, we've been conducting R&D here for 5 years. Some of our growers here have also come from previous cannabis jobs here in Australia. I don't know how much your viewers are aware of some of my history, but I've been a pioneer in the Australian cannabis industry, so quite a lot of experience myself. We've just got a small team here at the moment, as you would expect, for an R&D facility, but we're also looking at expanding. But, you know, a lot of people think cannabis is easy to grow. I mean, if you drop a seed on the ground, it will grow. It's one of the reasons that one of the slang terms is it's called weed. It's easy to grow. It is not easy to grow good quality, consistent cannabis year round. That is the bit that is difficult. And that goes for anything. That goes for any of the listeners who've ever tried to grow tomatoes in their backyard. You know, you think it's easy, but then it's all of a sudden you realize it's actually a huge leap to commercial horticultural production. So we've got a great team who've been working here, conducting our R&D trials over the last 5 years, and we are really looking forward to, and I don't know about you, Ben, but I get people asking all the time for jobs now that, you know, we're quite in the public eye at the moment. So we will be looking at expanding our team as well, and we'll be looking for other you know, experienced growers, not necessarily illicit growers. Obviously we have to employ fit and proper people. So what we're looking for is, you know, if you've got legal cannabis experience, or if you've got commercial horticultural production experience, you know, they're the kind of people that we're looking for. Now, it's always difficult here because we really respect and honor the legacy growers. But for anyone, and I get asked this plenty of times, for any of people who fit into that category of a legacy illicit grower, please do not put that on your resume. As soon as you put, and if you think that's silly, trust me, I've seen it too many times. If you think that's silly, you know, and how do you get that across? All I can say is for us, under our Office of Drug Control license and every other cannabis producer, if you admit to us in your application that you have, you know, been involved in illicit cannabis cultivation, you no longer fit the profile of a fit and proper person, and our hands are tied. We cannot employ you. So we would like to honor and respect those growers, but please, you know, be very wise about how you communicate that to your potential future employees. And we hope one day that cannabis will be legalized and it will be okay to talk openly about all of that. We've seen in states and in the US where people have been let out of jail, have had their criminal records wiped. So, you know, that's what we're pushing for. And, you know, I say it all the time, but I want to say it again. I tip my hat to everybody who has come before me, who has held on to this plant, you know, despite prohibition, because we love this plant and this plant loves us. We've evolved together. And so, you know, we really want to get rid of some of the ridiculous regulations that still exist, you know, when it comes to recreational use, home grow, drug driving laws. There's so many things that we need to still work towards correcting, but we also need to, you know, pat ourselves on the back and realize just how far we've come. So yeah, I hope that sort of answers that question. Yeah.
Oh, I definitely think so. So we've run out of time for today, but I just want to thank you guys so much for your time, and everybody for your amazing questions and for being so involved and for the enthusiasm. We really, really appreciate it. So there is...
Can we encourage people to put questions in the discussion board?
Yes, please do.
We would love to respond to you.
Yes, there is an open public discussion board on the Birchal profile for the People's Plant. I'll just pop it in the chat box so everybody can have access to it. So please pop any questions you've got in there and everybody can see your questions, see the answers. So that's a great part of having the profile. And if you haven't invested yet and you'd like to, you've only got until Thursday next week. So get your skates on and get investing at the ground floor. It's a really great time to invest when the company is so early stage and going from strength to strength. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.